At 82, life has taught me many lessons, but if there's one choice I truly regret, it's moving into a nursing home. At the time, it felt like the right decision. My family reassured me, promising I'd have all the care and comfort I could ever need. I trusted them. But the day I arrived, reality struck. It was nothing like I had imagined. I know some of you might be considering this option, either for yourself or someone you love. Perhaps it seems like the safest path, or maybe you've been told it will bring ease and security. But before you take that step, there are 6 things I wish someone had warned me about before I moved in. Because the truth is, life in a nursing home isn't just about convenience, it transforms everything. And once you enter, leaving isn't as easy as you might think. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons may surprise you. And if you know someone thinking about making this choice, what I'm about to share might be exactly what they need to hear before taking a step they can never undo. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for weekly health tips that can truly change your life. And tell me in the comments, have you noticed any changes in your health recently? Now let's begin. Regret 1. The loss of independence. The most jarring realization after moving into a nursing home wasn't the cramped room, the structured meal times, or the unfamiliar faces. It was the stark awareness that I no longer had control over my own life. Before coming here, my days were my own. I decided when to rise, when to eat, and how to spend my time. If I wanted to take a stroll, I did. If I felt like cooking, I could. If I simply wanted to sink into my favorite chair with a good book, no one dictated otherwise. But here I quickly learned that my time was no longer mine to manage. Everything followed a schedule that someone else had set. Breakfast arrived at a fixed hour, whether I had an appetite or not. The lights went out at night, regardless of whether I was ready to sleep. A simple walk outside, that now required permission and patience, as I often had to wait until someone was free to assist me. The choices I once took for granted, what to eat, what to wear, began to feel less like rights and more like privileges. I still remember my first week here. I woke up in a bed that didn't feel like my own, stretched my arms, and instinctively reached for the book I had been reading at home. But when my eyes scanned the room, the reality sank in. This wasn't home. My cherished books, my worn-in chair, the little comforts I had spent a lifetime collecting, all gone. In their place were sterile walls and a bed I had never chosen. And the hardest truth? Once you surrender your independence, reclaiming it is nearly impossible. You adjust because you have no choice. You stop protesting when dinner is set before you. You stop asking if you can step outside when you please. You mold yourself to fit their structure, and in doing so, you start to fade. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly prepared to relinquish the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they slip away, you'll miss them more than you ever imagined. Regret 2. The pain of being forgotten. One of the most difficult realizations about entering a nursing home is recognizing that life beyond these walls doesn't pause. It keeps moving forward without you. When I first arrived, my family assured me they would visit often. I clung to their words, and in those early days, they followed through. My daughter stopped by every week, my grandchildren came on weekends, and for a while I still felt tethered to the life I once knew. But as time went on, the visits dwindled. My daughter began calling instead of coming. My grandchildren became caught up in school, in work, in the ever-pressing demands of their own lives. The holidays were the hardest. They all promised they would come, that we would spend time together, that I wouldn't be alone. But somehow at the last minute, plans always changed. And so I found myself sitting in the common room, watching other residents staring at the door, each one silently hoping that today someone would remember them. It wasn't that my family had stopped loving me. Life had simply pulled them along, and I was no longer part of its daily rhythm. When you're not present in their everyday world, it's easy for them to assume you're fine, that you've adjusted, that you don't need them as much anymore. But the truth is, the longer you stay in a place like this, the easier it is for others to forget just how much their presence still matters. I remember one evening sitting alone in my room, holding my phone, hesitating over whether to call my son. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to sound like I was pleading for attention. So I set the phone down, and in that moment, it hit me. This was my reality now. Days spent waiting, hoping that anyone would remember to include me. If you're considering moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you truly prepared for the loneliness? Because no matter how deeply your family cares for you, once you're out of sight, it's far easier than you'd ever imagine to slip out of mind. If you're still watching this video and find these reflections meaningful, please comment the number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I encourage you to do so and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Now let's continue. Regret 3. Losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought it was just a change of address. What I didn't realize was that I was also leaving behind the very things that gave my life meaning. Back home, I had responsibilities, I had routines to follow, hobbies to enjoy, and reasons to start each day with purpose. Even the smallest tasks, watering my plants, brewing my morning coffee, tidying up my space, gave me a sense of independence, a reason to move, to care, to belong. But once I arrived at the nursing home, those simple rituals vanished. My meals were prepared for me. The cleaning was done by someone else. The plants, once mine to nurture, were now just part of the decor, tended by strangers. At first, I convinced myself that this was a luxury, a chance to finally rest, free from the daily burdens of chores and responsibilities. Yet, after a few weeks, an unsettling emptiness crept in. The days stretched endlessly before me, each one mirroring the last. I wasn't the only one who felt it. I saw it in the faces of those around me, people who had once been vibrant and engaged, now merely passing time. There was a man named George, 84 years old, who had spent his entire life as a carpenter. At home, he was always working with his hands, fixing things, building small projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no workbenches, no pieces of wood waiting to be shaped. I watched as he withdrew into himself, his once strong hands resting idly in his lap. "I feel useless," he admitted to me one day, and I understood his words all too well. When you no longer have something to care for, something to create, something that depends on you, life starts to lose its spark. The mind slows, the body follows, and before you know it, you become just another name on a list, another resident in a place where the days move forward, but nothing truly changes. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, what gives my life meaning? Because once you step through those doors, finding purpose isn't just about keeping busy, it's about holding on with everything you have to the things that make you feel truly alive. Regret 4. Losing strength. Faster than expected. Before moving into a nursing home, I was doing quite well for my age. I wasn't running races, but I could manage on my own, taking walks, preparing my own meals, and sticking to small routines that kept me active. Grocery shopping, stretching in the mornings, even pacing around the house just to keep my legs strong. But once I settled into the facility, everything shifted. At first, it felt like I was simply easing into a more comfortable way of life. Meals were delivered to me, so I no longer stood at the stove to cook. If I needed anything, all I had to do was press a button and someone would be there to assist me. What I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the more my body began to weaken. I moved less, and soon my legs grew stiff. I spent more time sitting, and before long, even standing up from a chair started to feel like an effort. The muscles I had worked so hard to maintain over the years were vanishing faster than I ever imagined, and I wasn't the only one. I watched it happen to others too. People who had walked in on their own 2 feet gradually came to rely on wheelchairs. Those who had once been independent now needed help with tasks that had once been second nature. It became clear, the more assistance we received, the more dependent we became. I remember my neighbor, Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was full of life when she first arrived. She made it a point to take daily walks around the facility, always saying, "I'm not going to slow down just because of a number." But as time went on, I noticed her walks became shorter. Then she started using a walker, not long after, a wheelchair. One day she turned to me with a weary look and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And that's exactly what it felt like. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. In a place designed to make life easier, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about convenience, it's about survival. If I had understood just how quickly my strength would fade, I would have fought harder. I would have pushed myself to stay active, to keep moving, even on days when I didn't feel like it. So if you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything around you is designed for comfort? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment the number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Your support allows us to continue creating meaningful content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Regret 5: the loss of privacy and dignity. Before moving into a nursing home, I never truly grasped just how much privacy I would have to relinquish. In my own home, I had a space that was entirely mine. I could close my bedroom door, sit in silence whenever I wanted, and go about my day on my own terms. But here, privacy is no longer a given, it becomes a rare privilege. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly under watch. Staff members moved in and out of my room throughout the day, scheduled check-ins disrupted any sense of solitude, and shared spaces meant I was almost never alone. Even the simplest acts, getting dressed, using the restroom, often required assistance. I understood they were just doing their job, but it's a difficult thing to accept when you've spent a lifetime doing these things independently. I remember that first week vividly, grappling with the reality that I now had to ask permission for things I once did without a second thought. Want to take a shower? You might have to wait until a caregiver is free to help. Need to use the restroom? Pressing the call button doesn't always mean immediate assistance. Even meal choices were no longer in my hands. If I didn't care for what was being served that day, well, there wasn't much I could do about it. Then there was the matter of roommates. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a private room, and being placed with someone you didn't choose can be an adjustment. I was lucky, my roommate was kind. But I heard stories from others who weren't as fortunate, stuck with roommates who were loud, unclean, or struggling with cognitive issues that made restful sleep impossible. No matter how many familiar items you bring to make the room feel like home, it never truly belongs to you. Dignity is a fragile thing, and I never realized how much of mine I would have to surrender until it was already slipping away. When people knock but don't always wait for an answer before entering. When you're spoken to as a patient rather than a person. When your days are dictated by a schedule you had no part in creating. It changes you. You start to feel less like yourself and more like just another name on a long list. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the privacy and autonomy you've known your entire life? Because once they're gone, getting them back is nearly impossible. Regret 6: discovering that leaving is harder than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it was just a temporary arrangement. I thought I'd give it a chance, see how things went, and if it didn't suit me, I could always leave. What I didn't realize, however, was how much harder it would be to walk away once I had settled in. At first, the solution seemed simple. If I didn't like it, I could just go back home. But home wasn't the place I remembered. The house, once full of life, now sat empty, and maintaining it from afar became an impossible task. My children had already started making changes. They sold off things they thought I no longer needed, rearranged the space, and even considered renting it out. When I mentioned the idea of returning, they hesitated. Are you sure you can manage alone? Wouldn't it be safer to stay? We just want what's best for you. Their words, meant to be reassuring, only made me realize how much control I had already lost. Then came the reality of physical decline. After months in a place where I didn't need to cook, clean, or even walk very far, I found myself weaker than before. The independence I had once taken for granted slipped away without me noticing. The thought of living alone again filled me with doubt. I met others who had come in thinking the same thing, that they would only stay for a short while, only to find that leaving was far more difficult than they had expected. The longer you stay, the more unfamiliar life outside becomes. Some people lost the option of leaving entirely. Their homes were sold, their savings drained by the cost of care, and before they knew it, the choice was no longer theirs to make. That's the part no one warns you about. Moving into a nursing home feels like a decision you can undo, but for most people it isn't. Slowly, it becomes your entire world, and the life you once knew fades into a distant memory. If you're considering this step, ask yourself, are you truly prepared for the possibility that once you enter, leaving might not be as easy as you assume? Because once you settle in, the obstacles, financial, physical, and emotional, may be far greater than you ever imagined. If you're still watching this and finding these insights meaningful, comment 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future videos. Your support allows us to continue creating content that informs and inspires. After all, looking back, I don't regret aging. What I do regret is believing that a nursing home was my only option. I walked in expecting comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. Instead, I found a world that gradually stripped away my independence, my privacy, my purpose, and even my sense of self. Does that mean all nursing homes are bad? Not necessarily. There are people who genuinely require the level of care they provide, but before you make that decision, think long and hard about what you're giving up. Because once you take that step, life will never be the same. If I had a chance to do it over, I would have fought harder to stay in my own home. I would have explored every possible way to get support without sacrificing my freedom. And I would have made absolutely sure that I truly needed to be there before making such a permanent choice. If you're at this crossroads, I hope you take the time to ask yourself, is this truly what's best for me? Or is it just the easiest solution right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your choices, your independence, is worth holding on to for as long as you possibly can. Thank you for spending this time with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and share one thing you've learned today and how you plan to apply it in your own life. Your voice matters, so don't hesitate to share. Reading your insights gives us motivation and encouragement. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us continue creating content that educates and inspires. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.